All right, welcome everybody. I hope you can all see the slide. I'm not going to be able to see you, so I'm going to invite you to interrupt me by just say something, stop me so that I can make sure we answer questions in real time. I think it's really important that you get your get questions answered when it comes up. So we're ready to go. We're going to be talking about today registering voters in Oregon. This slide deck has a little bit of everything. It has some information about young voters, about older voters, and also about registering new citizens. So here's what's coming. We're gonna talk about what voters need to know. We're going to talk about a little bit about ranked choice voting. That's one of the things voters need to know about, and they may ask you questions about who needs to register, about how do you fill out. We're going to go through how to fill out a voter registration card. I'm going to go through some questions that have come up in my experiences in registering voters. We're going to talk just a second about absentee ballots. Sometimes that comes up. What you need to do to make sure you're prepared for a voter registration drive. And then we'll spend a few minutes talking about the USCIS requirements, which actually are kind of good for all of us, not just for them. So we're always going to ask people first, is your registration up to date? Usually I start with that instead of, can I help you register to vote, or are you registered to vote? The best question to start with is your registration up to date, or do you need to update your registration? Usually if you just say, are you registered to vote, people will just say yes and keep walking. If you say, is your registration up to date, or do you need to update your registration? They might pause and go, what do you mean? And that gives you an in for getting them to talk to you about what it might mean. We also want to make sure that you know how to help voters check their registration. You can also remind them that the very same way you can go in after you voted to check to see that your ballot was counted. We're hoping that everybody in this group and that people that you talk to when you're out registering voters are helping friends and family update and register. We want to tell people to watch for their ballot. Ballots start going out October 16th. Last day to register is October 15th. We need people to research, learn about candidates and ballot measures. We always suggest that they go to Vote 411, but there are so many resources available for learning about what's on your ballot and how you can be a more informed voter. Also, make sure that they know they must have their ballot in by November 5th. I know there's that whole postmark thing, but I always tell people, don't trust the postmark thing. Just get your ballot in by November 5th. So if that means you mail it on November 1st, then do that. Or carry it in. Easy to do. And then you can always go back again and check to see that your ballot was counted. I want to just show you this QR code, which you can find anywhere in the Secretary of State's office or in the Secretary. That QR code will take you, if you want to take a picture of it right now with your phone, it'll take you directly to the Secretary of State's website, and you can go to My Vote, and then there's all kinds of things you can do on that website. And this is a really good thing to have. I have one out that I put in a table stand, and I just keep it right on the table where I'm registering voters. That way, if they're going by and they're not sure, they don't know for sure, they can just scan that and find out. They can check their own registration. By the way, registration updates of address or even name changes, well, actually a name change wouldn't be able to, but of certain things can be done online. You can change your party, you can change your address, all of those things can be done online. If you need to change your signature, you have to fill out a card because they need an actual signature. So that's another thing that comes up sometimes. So there's some other things that voters need to know. They need to understand what the closed primary means to them, and they need to know about the motor voter law. This is particularly true for young voters. Everybody with a driver's license in the state of Oregon is automatically registered to vote by the DMV. So many of our eligible citizens are registered. It's like 92%. And we have the motor voter law to thank for that. However, what many motor voter registrants don't know is that they're automatically registered as not a member of a party. So that comes up, that becomes an issue around primaries when they get their ballot and it has no one on it and they don't even understand why, and so they throw it away. They need to understand the difference between independent and non-affiliated. Many people think they're independent, registered independent, when they really are not a member of a party. So that's a thing they can go check online. In the state of Oregon, 57% of our voters are affiliated with a party, and that means any of the 10 major or minor parties. When you think about that, that's 43% that aren't. That's a pretty big number. So that's something we need to work with people on, I think, when we're out helping educate voters. Here's just some data. I'm a number freak, so here's some data that I love crunching every once in a while. As of August, I just checked on the Secretary of State's website. As of August, there are 3,012,777 registered voters in the state of Oregon. This is up about 12,500 from July. It's up 27,500 from last year's time. So that's kind of cool. We're getting better. Also, here's another one in 2022 in the primary, which was a pretty hot primary. We had a governor's race that was very contested, and there were a lot of people running on both the Democratic and Republican tickets. There was like 13 and 16 or something. It was crazy. But even at that, with all the media blitz that there was around the around that governor race, only 38% of the ballots were returned in that primary. And that's less than half of that percentage was 18 to 34. It was like 7 or 8%. It was really bad. So that is a big fallout from so many of our voters being registered as not affiliated. And I think it's important to let voters know that every single vote matters. Their vote matters. We want to keep telling them. And ranked choice voting is here, people. Get ready. I love doing this sort of research stuff. So first, I did some research about ranked choice voting, and I found out unbelievably that in 1908, the Oregon Constitution was amended to allow ranked choice voting. It took a long time before anybody actually did anything with that, even though the voters voted to amend the Constitution in 1908. 1908, it wasn't until 2016 that Benton County first, they passed ranked choice voting for their county elections. 2022, the city of Corvallis did, the city of Portland, Multnomah County. Also, the Democratic and Republican Party use ranked choice voting straw votes when they do their governor selection. So it's come a long way, and it took a long time, but here we are. 2020 was the first election held in the state of Oregon. It was in Benton County. This fall, we have Portland City Council and mayor. And we also have coming on the ballot in the statewide ballot, we're going to have voters deciding whether statewide and federal races will use ranked choice voting statewide. Multnomah County will start its ranked choice voting in 2026. So kind of fun, interesting. I just threw that in because I like it. So who needs to register in Oregon? People who recently turned 18 or will before November 5th, on or before November 5th. Any voters who moved, any voters who changed their name, which doesn't happen that often, but you'd be surprised how often it does happen in the LGBTQ community. There are very many people. Changing your name is really common. So that's, if you're ever in one of those situations, like if you're doing voter registration in Pride Week or something like that, then that's something to keep in the back of your head. Also, voters who receive their mail at a different address than their residence, and at some point it has changed. Voters who are recently released from incarceration. There's a whole set of rules about that. We're going to talk about that for just a minute. And then for all of these, you can do these all online. The name change would also require a signature change. That's the only thing. So, well, it might require a signature change. But the name change would probably require a signature change, so that would require a paper form as well. But citizens whose signatures change must use a form, and any citizens that are new voters must use a form. So, and sometimes that even includes people who've moved here from out of state because they need to have a signature on file. They may have their driver's license. One of the things so they would, if they have their Oregon driver's license, then they would be registered through that and would have a signature on file, so they would be okay. The other thing that comes up with signatures is young people whose signature on file was the way they signed with the little plastic stylus and the little tiny screen when they got their driver's license when they were 16. So many 18-year-olds, when you do registrations in college campuses, many students recognize that their signature has changed sometimes drastically since they were 16 years old. And so they need to do a new form. And new U.S. citizens who've never voted before, also true for people who still have their out-of-state license. They don't have an Oregon license yet. Then they need to register with a form. So there are some situations where you can't, online doesn't help you. But let's go through the card, make sure everybody knows how to do it. That website you're looking at right there, you can actually download this card and print it off on your printer. Surprisingly, I do a lot of USCIS voter registrations for the Immigration Services for New Citizens, and they give every new citizen a voter registration card, and they actually print them from this. So they're little black and white printer paper copies. So totally legit. If you run out of copies, you can make some more. And this is the website you go to. This is what the card looks like. This is opened out and flat. This is I call the inside because it folds over and makes an envelope. So we're going to go through this really, really carefully. Please stop me if you have any questions, because I want to make sure that you understand each of the steps along the way. First, let's look at the left side of this card, because there's a lot of information on there, and some people think of that as fine print and it doesn't matter. But there's some really good information on there that you might want to point out to voters as they're filling it out. First, up in the upper left-hand corner, tells you what this form is for: registering to vote or updating your registration. Oh, by the way, updating your registration is free. A lot of times people say, I've already done this once. Will they charge me if I? It's totally free, and you can register and update your registration as many times as you want. In the election office, they keep the most recent voter registration card is what they use, but they don't get rid of the old ones. So if your signature doesn't match for some reason, if the computer sees it as different and it kicks your ballot out, then Human Eyes will look at it to see if it matches, see if they can tell whether it matches. They also look back at the last recent, but not the very last voter registration update to see if your signature matches one of those. So it's actually, they'd go out of their way and bend over backwards to make sure your vote gets counted. Make sure they're using blue or black ink. I always have lots of pens with me because people never have them, especially if you're sitting out like at a farmer's market or outside of a library or something. People are not going to walk by with a blue or black ink pen in their hands. So have them ready. They must sign that form, and then either you can give it to them if there's some reason for it, and we'll come up with some reasons why, but I always take them. Is there a question? No, somebody's just making noises. Okay. So I always take them myself to the county office. Now, you may run into people who are not, like if you're in Hillsborough doing voter registration, you may run into people who are not from Washington County. That is okay. You can take it to any county elections office. They will forward it to the right one. So you don't have to make trips all over the state if you meet up or you run into people who are from different counties. Okay, up here on the right, if you're 18 years of age, you will not receive your ballot until after your 18th birthday. So this is another important thing about young voters, is that they cannot check anything online until after they turn 18. So until they're officially on the voter rolls, the online links don't work for them. So everything has to be done by this card. They are also welcome to call. But you can register voters who are 16 or older. But remember, just let them know that if they're between 16 and 18, that they can't check online until after they're an official voter. The deadline to register is always 21 days before the election. For this next election, it's October 15th. And sometimes we have had this where we've had a petition, a drive right next to or close to a voter registration drive. And it's important to note that that your voter registration has to be official before you're allowed to sign a petition. So if you're doing both and you have them and you do a voter registration, and you also have a petition there, you have to tell them you have got to come back and see me later, because this has to get run through the process. Your voter registration has to go through the process before you can sign a petition. There's information there about Spanish, if they need Spanish or hearing impaired, if there's call numbers to call. There's a lot of information there about assistance. I always suggest people, if they have any questions, to call their county office, because I have found in every single county I've worked in that the county elections office is the most approachable and available group you will ever find. They answer the phone, they talk to you, they help you solve your problems, they want to help you solve your problems. It's awesome. Now, that one big red box on the right, closest with the big arrow pointing over, I'm going to talk to you about that later. This is the one thing, this is the one little sticky wicket that might make you want to send the form home with people, as opposed to just taking it to the election office yourself. So that's the left side. You kind of know what everything is on there. This is what the back looks like. Well, it's half of the back, but every single county, 36 counties in the state of Oregon, every single county's contact information is on this, and it's updated. So there's a mailing address, so that when you fold this form over, and you can put a stamp on it, and the voter can put a stamp on it and mail it in. And this is where they need to write down whichever county they want that to go to. It also has a phone number. So if you're out and you're helping people register and you're in Klamath County and they have a question that you can't answer, call that number. They will answer the phone and answer it for you. I guarantee it. Well, maybe I shouldn't guarantee it. But let's look over at the other side now. And this is just the top half. So it's nice and big so you can really see it. First section at the very top is qualifications. You cannot forget this. The voter registration will not be entered into the system if this is not marked. These are important. So this is kind of cool, because when you do the USCIS voter registrations for new citizens, they get to check that box, that first yes box, for the first time in their lives, which is pretty cool and pretty fun. And then they have to be at least 16 years of age. So both of those top boxes need to be marked yes. If you mark no on either one of them, you just stop. You can't go any further. There's no point. All right. The other consideration we want to talk about, it isn't one of the check boxes, but is if a person has recently been incarcerated, now been released from incarceration. So one of the things that I've noticed in my many years of doing this is that the most common place to find people who have been recently released is the libraries. So if you're outside of a library, you're more likely, I mean, I'm not saying you will, but you're more likely to have someone come by who's homeless and also who has been recently released. So those two situations come up more outside of libraries than just about anywhere else. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. There's some rules in the state of Oregon. For first, If you have been convicted but not yet sentenced, you can still vote as long as your sentencing hearing is after the election day. If you've been released, but you're still on parole, you can vote. Even if you're required to wear an ankle bracelet, you can still vote. But it's important that recently released people recognize that they have been, as soon as they're admitted into the penitentiary system, they are removed from the voter rolls. And so at this point, they have to fill out a card and to get back in as a voter, because at the time you meet them and they've been recently released, they will not be on the voter rolls. Now, that's not true for someone who's recently convicted but hasn't yet been sentenced. They're probably going to stay on the voter rolls, or they will stay on the voter rolls until they're sentenced and imprisoned. So here's reasons in the state of Oregon for recently incarcerated people that they cannot vote. If you're currently serving a sentence in an Oregon prison, obviously, if you're serving a sentence for a felony conviction in a jail, in a county jail, but not a state prison, but you're still in jail, you cannot vote. If you're actively incarcerated for a felony in any other state, you cannot vote in Oregon. If you were convicted of a felony, but you're on work release, that means you're out on weekdays to work, but you have to go in on weekends, you cannot vote. And if you're no longer in prison, but required to reside in a halfway house, that's an extension of the imprisonment, then you cannot vote in Multnomah County. Now, there was some confusion about those last two. Some people in Lane County were insisting that that was wrong, but I called Multnomah County, talked to the elections officer, and they assured me that at least in Multnomah County, for 100% sure, these aren't no voting restrictions right there. So I feel pretty confident, but I'm also going to throw that out just in case. All right, so we've got a voter. They've checked yes on the first two boxes, and now we are into personal information. Some of these are asterisk, those are required. The ones who are not asterisk are not required. So if those not asterisk blanks are left empty, there won't be a problem. If any of the asterisk ones are, the voter registration will not go through. So we want to make sure that first and last name are there. People often will say, should I put in my middle name? And I always say, just do whatever I always suggest, do it the way your official ID has it. That way you don't have to wonder, did I put in my middle initial? Did I put in my middle name? So, and that happens often too when you're having people sign petitions because they can't remember how they sign, because they have to sign the way they do their ballot. So they can't remember. I don't remember if I use my middle name. Well, so always good to pick a way and just stick with it. But you don't have to put a middle name. You can just do first and last. Now, this next one is also required, and this is the residence, not necessarily the mailing address. If you get your mail somewhere else, the residence is to identify your precinct. It tells the election office which ballot to send you. So it's important that this is an actual residence. It needs to be in the state of Oregon, of course. And your birth year and birthday year is also required. This is just to identify you. I did the math on this and figured out that when you can register if were born between 07 and 08, but you won't be able to vote unless you're born in the 05, 06 range. Oh, and I did that in June, so it's probably different now. Okay, and the county's not required. You can see that, but I always say, don't give them all the information you can. You definitely can't hurt your chances by giving more information than less. And then phone and email are both optional. I let people know, and this is one of the things that it will say on the Secretary of State's website, is that never will your personal information, your phone or email, be used in any commercial way. They're only asking for it if there's if your ballot arrives and there's something seriously wrong with it, What they usually do is send a postcard saying you need to come in, your ballot didn't, something was wrong with your ballot, but sometimes they will contact you. And if they have information there, they might, like could somehow going through the mail, it got shredded and they were unable to read it. So that gives them a way that they can contact you if if your ballot is not going to get counted and you haven't responded to their postcard. They always send a postcard, but I don't know, postcards are pretty lame. And then if you are receiving your mail somewhere other than your residence, then that last line is only used if you have that situation. Now, we use these a lot in college campus voter registration drives because students can actually be say a Klamath County resident, but they're going to school in Washington County, and they can receive their ballot at their school address, even though it's a Klamath County ballot. Sometimes students in colleges want to get the ballot. They want to, I found this to be true. A lot of times students don't become politically active until they're in college. And so they get kind of hooked into the politics of where they're going to school. And so sometimes they prefer to be voters in the county where they are going to school as opposed to their home county where their parents live. So that is an option. That means they need to put through an address change. So this card would do that for them, but they'd put their school residence up there on the residence address line. If they want to receive their ballot from home, so like I said, if they live in Klamath County and they're going to school in Washington County, they can put their Klamath County address up there where it says Oregon residence and then put their Washington County school address on this line, and it'll make sure that their ballot arrives there. Always remind voters to watch the mail, because a few days after they fill out this card, they should be receiving that little postcard from the county elections office saying you are now registered to vote, and that shows them that they are going to receive their ballot. No questions so far? I'm scaring you probably, right? Okay, so next we have ID. So we've got all the personal information about our person. We know they're a citizen. We know they're over 16. Now we're going to make sure we get identification information. First choice always is a driver's license, Oregon driver's license, permit, or ID. It does come up, especially for college students, that they don't have an Oregon driver's license. In that case, if they're voting in Oregon, they can use the last four of their Social Security. By the way, this also happens sometimes with senior citizens because they have their license, they quit driving and they just let their license expire. So one of the things to know about that, though, is that if the license has been suspended or revoked, if it's suspended, it is valid. You can still use the number. If the license was revoked, you cannot use that as ID. So, and I've had several older people that they have their driver's license, but it's been punched and it's long expired. I usually have them put it in, and then I also have them do the last four of their Social Security. So there are a couple different ways that it might happen that they don't have a valid Oregon ID or driver's license. And if that's the case, last four of Social Security will make sure, especially if first and last name are somewhat common. I mean, the address is going to help identify them, but it's also good for double, triple check to make sure that they're registering the right person. Now, remember that big red box on that left side over there in the fine print? Now is when we get to that. And that is if you don't have a current driver's license or a Social Security number, and this would come up probably nowadays only for new citizens. It's pretty rare because all babies, I mean, starting with my second child, had to have a Social Security number at birth. So everybody basically has one, unless they're becoming a citizen, and they may not, but even some of them have them, I've found. So if they don't have either a driver's license or a Social Security card, here's where I give them all the information. This is what was in that little red box over there. all the possible ways that, and you can just point them to it. These are all the things you might use to prove where you live. What they're trying to do is identify you and make sure your address is where you live. So a paycheck stub, a utility bill, bank statements. I mean, there's all kinds of government documents, though anything with a photo ID, even a passport you can use, but you are going to have to walk this in because I'm not taking it in for you. You need to take it in because I can't handle this much stuff. So I just tell people at this point, if they have neither a driver's license or a social security number, and often you don't find this out until you get down to that point on the card, they've got it mostly filled out. So at this point, I show them that little red box and I say, you need to take a couple of these things with you and go into the elections office. Address is right here on the back of this form. Here's the list of all the things. You can go in and get yourself registered by showing and proving that you're proving your name and address. Questions? Okay, I'm either doing a good job or a really bad job. All right, political party. Oh, this is the hard one. So point out that they don't have to do this. They can leave it completely blank, but make sure they know that if they leave it completely blank, they will automatically become not a member of a party. The elections officer will just automatically check not a member of a party for them. So we have all of these different ways of being non-affiliated. All of these are called non-affiliated, and not a member of a party is just one of many. You're also not affiliated if you belong to the Constitution Party, the Independent Party, the Libertarian, Pacific Green, Progressive, Working Families, and the new one, the No Labels Party, isn't on this form yet, and they haven't reprinted it and put it on. So if anybody is a member of No Labels, I just have them write it at the bottom. So all these different ways of being non-affiliated, and then we've only got 2 ways of being affiliated. So just important for them to know, it doesn't matter if for the general election and for this particular voter registration drive, you don't need to worry about it. All voters get the same ballot. So it doesn't matter at all whether they're registered as in one of the 2 major parties. I personally am a member of the Independent Party of Oregon. And so I just share that and I tell them that right before the primary, I go online and I pick a party, one of the 2 independents, and I actually have changed it up my life and during my whole voting life. And I, so that I get a ballot with people on it. Otherwise, there won't be anybody on your ballot except for, you know, non-contested judge races and, you know, and ballot measures. You get to vote for ballot measures. You just won't have any of the partisan candidates. So, and most people don't even know that. So good, just information, get the information out there. That's one. And at this point, I always say it doesn't matter right now. You can leave that totally blank. Just know that if you leave it blank, then they are going to mark you as not a member of a party. The other thing is, yeah, so we don't know that, but that whole being an independent versus being not a member of a party, there's so much confusion with voters about that. So help them clear that up. Last, but definitely not least, you must have a signature on here. I also really like to point out that little bold sentence right below, because you know, there's all this talk about these days about voter fraud, and this, you know, Oregon isn't messing around here. If you sign this card knowing it to be false, you can be fined $125,000 in prison and/or imprisoned up to 5 years. Could be both. So make sure this is true and accurate. Sign it, date it, and then I, the voter registration person, have 5 days to get it to a county election office. Usually that's easy to do. I have had situations where it was a little bit tricky because we were working on a long weekend for a festival that started on Thursday night. We were there Thursday night, all day Friday. Everything was closed Monday because it was a major holiday. So it was Tuesday before I could get those voter registrations in, and that's the 5-day mark. So it was, sometimes I've been a little tense, and sometimes after the Thursday night one ended too late to go in. So I could have done it Friday morning, and sometimes I have done that. But I have to say, once again, that the election offices that I've worked with have been so accommodating. And we even had one group when I was doing this in Deschutes County who took all the voter registration forms in and turned them in. And then like a week later, found another little stack that she had gotten stuck behind something in her bag. And she was mortified because there were like 10 little people who thought they registered to vote. And so, we just called the elections office and told them what happened. They said, don't worry about it, just bring them in. We're not going to penalize people for that. We'll just do it. So, but I always say, call them. They are so nice to work with. Okay, very last, and this last part of the form does not need to be filled out unless there's something changed up above. So this is for updates only. So for example, if a person changed their name, they would fill out this whole card with their new name. And then add name, address, da, da, da. And then down here in the previous registration name, they write their old name. And then they still fill in home address on previous county and state, and your date of birth. They just want to make sure that they unregister you however you were registered before. This is also true if you change your address. This is true if people move here from out of state. So if someone is here, they just moved here a couple months ago from Arizona, they would have to fill this out, and then they have to tell me their Arizona address, the previous county and state, and their date of birth and their name. If their previous name was the same name, they still have to write it. And I always tell them, they go, why do I have to write that again? I always tell them it's because the person who does this unregistration for your old name or address only looks at the very bottom. So everything they need needs to be down there. They're not going to go searching around up above. They've got thousands of these to do, right? So you need to put your previous name, even if it's the same name as you have above. You need to put your home address, even if it's the same as it is above, and your previous county and state, and your date of birth. Date of birth can't change as far as I know. No questions, because we have done this whole form, and now we just pick it up. Oh, I forgot to do my clicks here. There we go. So now we're ready to move to a bunch of questions. I hope I've covered these as I've gone. I've just collected these over my, 20 years of doing voter registration drives. I have picked up a lot of questions that have been repeated. Why do I need to update my signature? This comes up a lot. Young people, I think I told you about the voter, their 16-year-old stylist signature being different than the way they sign their name now. Also, this happens a lot with older voters. I often, and I count myself in that group, by the way, when I'm talking to an older person, I just ask them, has your signature changed? Because that's something you might need to update, and it can only be done with a form. So we're here to help you do that. Why would I need my phone and email? I think I talked to you about that. If you registered to vote, oh yeah, will I have to do jury duty? This question comes up. It's amazing how often. And the answer is probably maybe. But my personal experience is I've been a voter for over 50 years, and I have been called for jury duty twice. And actually, up until July, I had been called for jury duty once. I could always say once in 50 years, but I got called in July. It was a pain too. How do I decide which party, and does it really matter? This comes up a lot, especially with younger voters who aren't a member of a party and they don't have any idea. It's also true for new citizens. Does it really matter? It doesn't really matter unless it's a primary. So that I like to have that discussion. I also encourage people to go online, Google the parties, look at their platforms, see what they believe, what their values are, and find one. And I warn them, you won't find the perfect thing, the perfect party for you. that perfectly aligns with all of your values, but you might find one that's closer than any of the others. So that's what I always suggest that they do. Just look at what they believe and how does that fit with my personal values, and then which one am I closest to? And then also, right before the primary, pick one of the two big ones so that you get to vote for people. Oh, this comes up. What if I don't want to vote by mail? I don't believe in voting by mail. I don't believe it. It's voter fraud. I mean, all that stuff comes up. Let's just say, you know what? You don't have to. You'll get your ballot in the mail, but you don't have to vote by mail. You can carry your ballot into your elections office. They always have a couple of little booths in there, and you can vote in that voting booth and turn it in. Your choice. It's just like going to a precinct, but it's your elections office. I don't think the elections office wants a whole bunch of people, but I think once people figured out in Oregon how nice it is to vote by mail, nobody really wants to vote in person anymore. What if my ballot is lost or damaged, or if I mess it up, can I still vote? Absolutely. If you have a problem with your ballot, take it in to the county office take your ID and tell them you had trouble with your ballot. They will print you a new one. It's as easy as that. What if I've been convicted of a felony? We kind of beat that dead horse to death. And then how often am I allowed to update? As often as you want. You can do it. There is no charge and no penalty, and it does not affect anything. Remember, the most recent voter registration card is going to be the one they have on top, but they will still they still have the ability to look back at older ones to see if your signature doesn't match, for example, if they find one that it can match to. Can I vote if I'm homeless? This comes up in outside of libraries, like I said, is not uncommon. And yes, you can vote if you're homeless. You can vote, you can use, and you need an address because they need to know what ballot to send you. So they need a precinct. So that's where the address comes in. So what we often tell them is there a food bank that you frequent? Is there a shelter that you go to often? If so, check with them, because many of those will let homeless people use their address for their voting record. And then if you're not there when the ballots are mailed out, you can always go into the county office and ask for a ballot. They'll print you one. And it's just like, but they record it, and so they know you're not going to get to vote twice. They are very, very careful about that. But yes, if you're homeless, you can still vote. You just have to figure out a way to get an address in there. You can also go into the county office and I want to register, and have them help you figure out how to do it. They can help with that. Sometimes I've had people say, I use my sister's address. She lives across town or something, and that works too. A family member, a good friend who has an address that they will let you. Sometimes they not only let you use the address, but they'll collect your ballot for you. And then what if I'm away from home during an election? Sometimes we travel, and sometimes we are, for example, students live away from home during elections frequently. And we want people to be able to vote in those situations as well. And so one of the things we have is an absentee voting, that we have a form for absentee voting. Here's what that form looks like. And you can see right at the top, it says Oregon absentee ballot form, and it tells what you can use the form for right underneath it. It's really similar to the regular card. It looks kind of the same, but it's much simpler. People who need this are people who are serving the armed forces, merchant marines, temporary living outside of the territorial limits of the United States. If you need a ballot, you can pick one up and print it out yourself. Or you can, I think for PDX, we sometimes have them in our crates, a few in our crates, but we can always just direct people if they want an absentee ballot to fill out. This would be particularly like if you know you're going on vacation and you want to vote, then you can do it ahead of time. You can contact your office, you can do it ahead of time. Again, blue or black ink. You must sign it, and you need to drop it at the elections office. Possible reasons for accepting: you might be on vacation, you might be a college student, you might be living part of the year in another state, like snowbirds who decide to vote in one state or the other. And if one election's in May and the other's in November, they might be in different states for those particular times of year. Or temporarily displaced due to disaster. This happened when I was living in Deschutes County when there were all those terrible fires, and we were just inundated with people from the over the pass where those fires were so bad and they didn't have any place to go. And so we did voter registrations like crazy that election in the motels because they were full of displaced people. But they could get their real ballot. You can check here whether or not you want to pick up a ballot in person or you have it mailed to this address and then you put in the absentee address. This is a one-time thing. This is not the same as just changing your address for good. This is a one-time thing. And then signature, etc. All right, if you're planning a drive, make sure you have plenty of supplies. Blue or black inks are really important. Ink pens are really important, and you need to get a bunch of voter registration cards. Easy to pick up. Go to your closest election office. Tell them you are getting ready to do a voter registration drive. They come in packs of 100. They will often ask for you to tell them what organization you're working with and sign a little form, but that's easy. I always suggest people don't do this alone. It's just, I don't think you should do anything alone really, but pick another person to work with, often because you might have multiple people doing this at the same time. Like you might have a couple or a family walk up or 2 or 3 people at once, and you need more than one person there. You can, if it's a small venue, you can do it with 2. When we do the USCIS, we have at least 5 because these people come streaming out all at the same time. They've just taken their oath and they all want to register. So it's like you got to have 4 or 5 people there. The other time I think it's important to have multiple is if you're doing a senior living, which I love doing those too. But because they want to sit and talk. So be ready for that. And it's good to have 4 or 5 people there just because you can entertain more than one person at a time. I said this already, but I'll say it again. Instead of saying, would you like to register to vote in the next election? Or do you want to update your voter registration for the next election? Those are 2 ways to say it. I think most people, if you just say, are you registered to vote in Oregon? They'll just say yes and then leave you. But also make sure they live in Oregon, which isn't all, we have lots of visitors in our state. So a lot of times we'll find people that don't really live here. Make sure you have a connected device with you, but that could be just your phone. But then I always suggest that you use theirs and have them do it, because then the search history will be on their phone. So if you have your QR code sitting out and they search it with their phone, then that search history will be in their phone and they'll remember how to do it next time. Much better than just watching you do it. Although they don't have, I mean, like I got to tell you, in senior living places, there still are a lot of people with the flip phones. So they can't do this. So you can do it on yours and show them this is how you do it. And then they can go back to their computers and do it. Always have the QR codes, website information, so that they can check their registrations or they know how. And then make sure you keep really good track of those cards. I always have a special envelope set aside. So when there's multiples of us, we're always putting the cards in the same large envelope so that they all end up in the same place. And then double check before you put them in there that all the little boxes are marked and all the asterisks are filled in. Okay, I'm just going to really quickly go through the USCIS requirements, which actually have a lot of really good things for all of us. When we volunteer, the league has a special dispensation to do this with the immigration services, and no one else can. So it's kind of an honor. We always make sure that we safeguard all that personal information. This is true for all of us. When a person has filled out that form, we never take a photo of it. We have to make sure it's put away so that no one can look over our shoulder and read it. That personal information needs to be tucked away immediately. We need to always follow the schedule and the logistical requirements. The field leadership is always out there telling you where you can be and what you can, where to set up and when you can do it. Make sure you're properly trained. And that's actually a requirement by the Immigration Service that we train anybody who does this. I'm glad Louise is here because she's going to join me on the 17th, and we're going to register new voters at the county. It's not at the same place. It's not the courthouse, it's somewhere else. Receive an on-site briefing from field leadership. Wear professional attire, represent yourself and your organization professionally, and your name tags need to have League of Women Voters identification, but no other identification can be worn or displayed. So no candidate pins, no anything for other organizations. So we do have a banner that we put out, but that's the only thing that they will allow. All right, so trained members are authorized by the government to provide voter registration forms, assistance in completing forms. This is true for all of us. If somebody is having trouble writing, if they don't speak English, there are registration forms in, I don't know, 12 different languages or something. I mean, we usually have a little stack of Spanish forms, but we don't always have everything there. So sometimes I will help them fill it out. So sometimes it's broken Spanish, English, but you can fill out the whole form for a person, and then they need to sign it, sign and date it. And that also happens sometimes when people are disabled, like this happens in senior living, where a couple will come in and one of them can't write anymore. And so the other one will fill out 2 forms, and then the one has to sign their name. And that way the new signature, or if it's not the same as it used to be, the new signature then gets into the system. We make sure we review the form when it's completed, and then we also collect the forms and take them to the local office. Any nonpartisan educational information is allowed. No partisan information is allowed. So we don't ever talk about candidates or parties in any partisan way. We can explain parties, but mostly what we do is just say, look them up, go look up and see what they believe, and see which one matches you the best. But all the nonpartisan educational information about voting is allowed. And that's also true for the league rules. So that this really aligns perfectly with how the league rolls. Okay, we must not attempt to influence or interfere with any person's right to vote, engage in any religious or commercial solicitation, discriminate on the basis of sex, race, color, gender, religion, age, etc., etc. Collect, retain, or share any of this personal information, even if it's volunteered by the voter, even if the voter says, here's my email, will you send me an email? You need to not do that. Use personal information for any other purpose than voter registration, and then after the completed voter registration, or alter them in any way. So if somebody forgot a part, like this has happened when I had to chase somebody down the street and say, you didn't check the first box, come back. I mean, I could have checked it for them if they were there, but if they've already left, I got to go get them. So I've done that. Questions?
Mimi, go back to that last slide, please. Can you flip back? What is USCIS for?
United States Customs and Immigration Services.
Okay, I figured customs.
Got it. Immigration Services is who does the new citizen swearing in ceremony. And that's where that's where you're going to be with me right after the swearing in ceremony on September 17th. We get to register the new citizens to vote.
That'll be my practice.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's really cool because they all come out, and almost all of them want to do it. I mean, it's very unusual because you're sitting in a farmer's market or outside of a library, and you know, maybe 1 out of 10 people that walk by actually want to do something with their vote. But this is like everybody. And last time I did it, there were 40 new citizens from 27 different countries. And I think we registered 35 of them. And sometimes they're family members, because, you know, the other thing that's really cool is any child that's under 18 at the very moment that that parent swears, says their oath, their children are all automatically citizens. So that's a cool thing too. So we can welcome them to the United States also. Anything else? And if you're not already a member, I never leave this out. This is League of Women Voters of Portland, but you don't have to join Portland. You can join, just go to League of Women Voters of Oregon. All right, I'm gonna unshare so that I can see you again. Why won't it unshare? Don't know. Wow, never had this happen before. Oh, there it is. Okay. There we go. It was acting for a minute there. Every once in a while, Zoom acts funny. All right, anything? We okay? Everybody feels ready? Yes, Sandy?
I have a question. There are so many people on this call, which is so exciting. Does everybody have know who to get in touch with if you're seeking to be a volunteer?
I'll tell you what, you can open the chat. If you want to be included, I just now opened the chat for the first time. So there's lots of people in here chatting already. If you want to be, there's several email addresses in there right now. I'll put mine in for sure. Let me get it right. And anybody else want to put your email in? We can put it, I can start a little group email and you guys can decide if you want to talk among yourselves. Anything else?
I think they're signing up for the slide deck and maybe the recording link.
Okay, I'll do a group email. If you put your email in there, I'll send you all the deck. And it's yours to do with as you please. Just a warning, it's very animated. So you need to watch it on a screen show, because some of those slides look pretty weird when they're static.
Do we have time to just go around and introduce ourselves and say where we live, just so we can kind of?
Sure, it's a great idea. Should we? I'm gonna say let's start with Bettina, because I'm looking at all of you, and I did a screenshot of this screen, and she's in my upper left.
And she's muted.
You're muted, Bettina. Unmute so we can hear you.
Sorry.
No problem.
So I'm Tina, and I live in Cornelius. And I'm a member of the American Association of University Women, and that's how I friend of Claire Berger. So
Thank you. Should
I'm anxious to participate.
Do you feel ready?
Not quite.
Sort of.
Yes.
Okay, go Sandy.
Sandy Nipper, I live in Beaverton, helping Kathleen Hirsch in the Washington County unit organize voter registration events.
How about Beatrice?
Hi, I'm Beatrice Parrish. I live in Hillsborough. I'm a member of AAUW, and that's all. Washington County.
Louise?
Oh, I joined last spring and I live in, well, I have a Portland address, but I live in Rock Creek. So we're kind of stuck between Hillsborough and Beaverton. And so I joined Washington County unit, even though I'm in Portland quite a bit, just to stay more tuned into neighborhood issues and county issues, which are, you know, on my local ballots. So I thought that was important, and I'm enjoying meeting, you know, people out on my side of town in the burbs.
How about Donna?
Oh, hi, I've been supporting Sandy Nipper in some data entry, and will be joining today as soon as I'm done with the call. I've been putting it off. So
I can put
And-
that slide back if you want to just.
I got
I know,
it.
but you're going to join Washington County?
Washington County.
Okay.
Yay!
Yeah.
Yay.
And I live in the Cedar Hills area.
All right, Chris Power.
Actually, it's Marty Power. Chris is my husband.
Oh, hi, Marty.
It's his Zoom account. Diana called me this morning and asked if I could help with the voter registration drive at Eastern Oregon University. So I'm excited to get involved and help where I can.
I hope I gave you lots of good information about campuses because
Yes.
there's lots of work to do there. Okay, Paula.
I'm Paula Pinelli and I live in Hillsborough and I'm with AAUW and interested in helping them out maybe if they're going to have a table somewhere.
Excellent. UUAW, welcome. Happy to have you. League love doing stuff with you guys. How about Meg? Uh-oh. There you go. Well, I can help you. I
Okay,
have
here we
power.
go. I'm
There we
Meg
go.
Thompson. I'm in Clackamas County and just wanted to get more up to speed on voter registration. Hopefully we'll be able to help some people. I'm going to Willamette View next week with Diana to do a candidate forum for Clackamas County voters. And we may need to help some of the elderly, but I think they're very on top of it at Willamette View. They have like 90% voter turnout and very good registration. But I'd like to do the immigrant ceremony sometime. in the-
Okay, there's a bunch of them coming up. Send
All
me
right.
an email and I'll get you in on one.
Thanks.
Okay, Hillsborough Forest Grove. I still don't know your name.
Yeah, I'm Susan Hartman. I live in Hillsborough, and I understand we're going to do something sometime pretty soon.
Hopefully
So,
before too long.
oh yeah, and then Barbara Turnus, she's on here, but she told me that she cannot unmute
I can't either.
right
I
now.
bet I can do it. Well, maybe I can't unmute you. Even the host can't unmute, but I can ask to unmute. Shoot, it doesn't work, does it? Okay.
So she asked me to talk for her. So she lives in Hillsborough and she's with AAUW and part of trying to figure out what exactly we'll do for this.
Well, you guys from AAUW, don't hesitate to contact me if you have questions about how to set up or anything. I'll be there for you.
Great.
Okay. Anne.
Yes, I live in Redmond and I'm an AAUW member of Hillsborough Forest Grove and a League of Women Voters member in Deschutes County. So I may be helping in two different arenas.
Very cool. I was in the league at Deschutes County for 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, Barbara, we already heard about, and I think that's it. Do we hit everybody?
There's one more Hillsborough Forest Grove person.
Okay, who is it?
It's not named. Looks like there's skeins
I
of
think
yarn.
that's Susan.
Oh, that was Susan.
Yeah, that
Okay.
was Susan.
All right.
Okay, Diana. Oh, we missed Diana. Shoot.
That's okay. I'm not shy. A couple things. If AAUW doesn't have any formal dates set for voter registration and you'd like to pair with somebody in the league for learning, I believe Sandy, is it okay if they email you because you're looking for people? Some of the libraries have reached out in your area and they would love to have another person to help. So please contact sandy.nipper@pobox.com and you can pair up and partner with someone. I am in Clackamas County. Meg and I work together I'm also the membership chair for the League of Women Voters of Oregon. So we are trying to support Eastern Oregon activities, even though there's very few members out there, but each one of them is important. So it's fantastic. Thank you so much, Mimi. It was a great training, and I can't wait to get out there.